Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi. Welcome back to Forgotten Mysteries. And today I have for you The Glass Mask by Lenore Glen Offord. This is copyright 1945 by the imaginatively titled Books, Inc. So, not a great cover, right? Not the best cover art. And, surprisingly, nothing on the back cover and nothing on the inside back flap, which tells me that this company was not particularly good about marketing its writers and its list. You have all of this free space in the jacket. Why would you not use that to include some blurbs or talk about other books on your list, or give a little teaser to generate the reader's interest? Many books of this era made the most of their real estate, but this book surprisingly does not. And I can't put it down to it being a war edition. It was published during the Second World War, but I have plenty of other books published at the same time that still made use of their real estate. Of course, you can't judge a book by its cover. That would not be fair. I just read a book by Andrew Garve that I loved. I reviewed it here, called Hide and Go Seek, and that didn't have great cover art, honestly, but the book was still great. So you can't judge a book by its cover, but maybe this is one instance where you can. So a little bit about Lenore Glen Offord is she wrote about maybe 12 novels, some of which reviewed very well. And she was also pretty well known as a critic for the San Francisco Examiner back in the day. So she definitely had the street cred. And I think she's kind of a B-lister, right? So I had seen her name over the years, and her books never really came my way until this one did in a used bookstore. And I thought, here is my chance to read Lenore Glen Offord. So I picked the book up, and it went onto my TBR, to be read shelf, and it stayed there for quite a number of years. Okay, don't think I'm crazy, but I feel like I have a little bit of a sixth sense about books when I get them, right? I don't know if it's like, what I find is that sometimes when I leave books on my shelf for a couple of years, and they haven't really grabbed my interest that I want to take them down and read them, and then I do read them, I often say to myself, now I see why I didn't really want to read it. I don't know if it's a combination of having read the first page or the look and the feel. I don't know, but I'm starting to go with my gut on these things, because I didn't have a great feeling about this book, which is why it sat unread for a number of years. But finally I thought, I'm in the mood. I had read a bunch of books that were set in England, and I like to come back to the States for my setting. And this one is set east of Sacramento in this sort of pretty little Victorian town of Valleyville. I am sorry to say I did not like this book. Those of you who watch this channel know that I'm usually a big advocate for the books that I review. And even when I find that they have, certain things that maybe didn't age particularly well, or that they weren't perfect for whatever reason, I still have the ability to like them, right? I don't expect books to be perfect. I don't expect every book to be a 5-star book, unlike, a lot of writers today who feel offended if they receive less than a 5-star review by anybody on Amazon. I mean, to me, 5-star books come along once in a lifetime, and a 3-star book is good. In my mind, that is a very worthwhile and a good review. But that's my way of thinking, which I don't think is really in sync with a lot of the way other people think these days. And quite frankly, it's the reason why on this channel I only review books by writers who are no longer living, because I want to be able to give my honest opinion, engage in some, good old-fashioned criticism, right? By which we mean seeing the pros, seeing the cons, and having a discussion without necessarily a lot of judgment or, say, dismissal of a book, or implying, I love this book, therefore I know that everyone else in the world will love this book, because that just isn't the case. I mean, can you think of anything in the world that is more subjective than fiction? Probably not. So I want to tell you why I didn't like this book. First of all, it doesn't really have a clearly defined protagonist. There's a main cast of sort of three characters. There's a man, Todd McKinnon, who interestingly writes pulp fiction, pulp mysteries. And then his fiancée, Georgine Wyeth, and her daughter, Georgine is a widow, and her daughter, Barbie, who's 8 years old. And throughout much of the book, it wasn't until really the last third that you realize that Georgine is the main character. The whole first 2/3, I was trying to figure out who's the lead here. And it kept me a bit discombobulated trying to figure out who I should follow and who I should be really invested in. And by the time I realized it was Georgine, I wasn't happy, because the author wasn't able to figure out whether Georgine is an independent woman with smarts who can add her own brand of detection and intuition and logic to the story, or if she's just a complete dipstick. She screams a lot. She's very jumpy. She alternates between being very involved in what's going on and saying, I don't want to be involved at all. So she feels not like a character who has been well conceived. I have to say, she's a bad mother. Right now, I don't know that the readership in the 40s would have noticed that, but modern sensibilities would look at her and say, what are you doing, honey? She is they're in a situation. It's not particularly frightening. It's supposed to be, but one of the reasons the book isn't great is because it's not. There's very little suspense. And even though she knows that she and her daughter are in this dangerous and unstable situation, she's always letting her daughter go off to play by herself or to take strolls in the woods with characters who are suspects in a murder. I just wanted to shake this woman and say, number one, keep your daughter close to you. And number two, get the hell out of there, right? This is one of those books where the protagonists stay in a place that is dangerous to them for no good reason. They could leave at any time, but they make stupid excuses to stay. And their stupid excuse is that they want to get married. Now, they're engaged at the beginning of the book. Why they would want to stay in this strange house where they were just intended to be guests for a few hours, and they end up staying for days, amidst all this family drama, why they would decide, let's stay in this house and get married from here, it boggled my mind. And it was just a really poor plot device for keeping them there. They should have gotten the hell out that first day. They talk about it, but did they ever do it? They do not. Another problem is there's really no suspense. There's no narrative drive. There's nothing at stake here. The murder that is being investigated is in the past. There's nothing in the present really to motivate wanting to figure out why and who. I mean, I guess the motivation is curiosity. And the hostess, the owner of the house where they stay, her ostensible goal is to exonerate her husband, who is away fighting in the war, because he feels as though he has been unjustly accused. And she really wants to get to the bottom of the death of an aunt who lived with them. And so she just conscripts these strangers into helping her solve the mystery. And, they agree to stay for whatever reason. Todd, the male part of the couple, he, in his defense, he sees fodder for his work, where he has some sort of illness that prevents him from serving in the war. So he's a writer, and he sees fodder here for pulp fiction. But, okay, fine. But at the expense of putting your fiance and her daughter in danger? Not good, dude. You shouldn't be doing that for a story. And I also thought, like, a writer could be a really fun character to write. I was hoping to see more of the inside world of the pulps and the magazines. And I noticed on the inside front flap of this book, it said, "This book has never appeared in any magazine," which reminded me about magazines back in the 30s, 40s, 50s used to serialize novels. Those days are mostly gone or completely gone. I would have liked to see more of that world, but I didn't. So every chapter was a slog. And, pages and pages where nothing happens, dialogue of not much import. There's supposed to be some frightening things going on, like scary footsteps behind you and noises in the attic. They're not frightening at all. So I finished it, but to say that I enjoyed it, I cannot say that. Because I want to be fair, I will say that I think that Lenore Glen Offord was a pretty good writer. Her writing is light. That kind of light writing should be easier to read, though. And for some reason, it was light but difficult to read. And that's kind of a hard two things to reconcile. So what I would do is say or recommend that if you want to read a book about a house where weird things are going on and you really don't know what they are and you're kept on the edge of the seat with suspense, try instead a book by Helen McCloy called Mr. Splitfoot. That is a terrific book, and it accomplishes everything that The Glass Mask does not. I also want to say, as my last bit here, is that this book reminded me a lot of a book that I read by Charlotte Armstrong, who I really like. I think her output was a little uneven, but I really like her as a writer. And she wrote a book, The House of Weird Sisters. And it was so similar to this one. I said, geez, like almost kind of clones in a way. And so I looked it up and I saw that the Armstrong book was published in 43 and this was published in 45. I'm in no way arguing or making the case that Offord stole from Armstrong. But I do think it's interesting to see that Armstrong did a pretty good job with the whole setup, and I don't think that Offord did. So I'm sorry not to have better news, but I do think it's important that readers are able to engage in honest criticism, to say what's on our mind, to recognize that no writer ever sets out to write a bad book, that there are plenty of readers out there who may and will disagree with me, and I completely respect your right to do that. But now I'm going to go get back to something that I hope that I will enjoy more. So Glass Mask is going on my shelf. Glad I read it. Don't think I'll be reading any more by this writer. Thank you and have a good night.